In addition to the domestic machines you have seen in some of the other videos, I also have some industrial machines, 2 to be exact, and I keep those in Pawnee at the showgrounds where they are on display there, and this is one of them. It's a devilish machine. It's a Hemstitch machine. It uses 2 needles. I have with it the original instruction book, which gives information on setup and operation of the machine. And I've had the machine set up and threaded, but I've never been successful at getting it to produce consistent results. It does take a bit of work to set up and adjust, but it's a fascinating piece of machinery nonetheless. It has 2 needles. They're not installed right now, but these are the clamping screws for the needles. They go there, and then there is a piercing piece. Might be difficult to see. There's a piercing piece right there, and if I cycle the machine a little bit, you can see the piercing piece right there. Has a bit of a spade shape, and it has 2 recesses on each side for the needles to pass against. Underneath the plates here on the bed of the machine are 2 rotating hooks and 2 bobbins. Each bobbin requires its own timing and side-to-side adjustment. They are mounted on brackets where the whole bobbin assembly can be moved closer to or farther from the needle, hence getting the hook either closer to or farther from the needle. In addition to the motion that's going on there, we have another set of linkages on the front of the machine arm, driven by a 3-to-1 face cam that operates a set of linkages that operate each of the needles. Each of the needles is pivoted. These screws here form a pivot, and the needles are able to rock back and forth, side to side. And if I operate the machine a little bit, I'm going to hold the presser foot off slightly so it doesn't rub on the feed dogs. You'll see that the needles can swing in and out. These are the upper guide rods for swinging the needles, so they're going to move in the opposite direction of what the needles move. Like that. The presser foot has 2 shoes and has 2 feed dogs for each shoe. Loosen this screw here and it'll tip the machine back. Be caught on. And looking at the under side of the machine, it's quite a bit more complex than a regular domestic machine. To transfer the motion from the top of the machine to the bottom are a pair of crank connecting rods. Each one is set 90 degrees from the other, so just like the connecting rods on a steam locomotive, you get continuous rotary motion transferred from the top shaft to the bottom shaft by the action of these rods. It's not like the connecting rods set up on a domestic machine where the bottom shaft will accelerate and decelerate during the course of a revolution relative to the upper shaft. On this machine, it rotates exactly in time with the upper shaft. And you can see the gearing here. This is a 3-to-1 reduction for driving the feed dogs. And here is a 2-to-1 increase to run the sewing hooks. Each hook makes 2 revolutions for every revolution of the main shaft, just like in most modern rotary hook machines. Because it's doing the hem stitch, the feed is activated on every 3rd stitch. And because of the action of the mechanism, it creates what's known as a bar or spoke pattern with a hole on each side of every stitch. This is the push piece for operating the lifting mechanism for the presser foot. Operates through this push rod here and connects to a knee pad. This machine's been modernized a little bit. It was originally a treadle machine. Here's the treadle. The centers are still there for the Pitman arm wheel, but the Pitman arm and the wheel have been removed and replaced with a linkage to a 1/4 horsepower motor that operates through a clutch mechanism. The wiring isn't in great shape. I don't see anything shorted out or anything, but nonetheless, I've never had this plugged in. Somebody has installed at one time a new line cord, but despite this, I've never actually plugged it in and tried to run it on electric power. Eventually, I will rewire it to where it will run safely. Actually, I'd like to convert it back to treadle if I could find the appropriate parts. The parts required are larger than the parts on a domestic machine, so you can't just find a domestic treadle stand and run parts from it. As you can see, they are quite a bit different, the proportions and size of the stand compared to the standard singer stand that you're used to sing. The machine is quite interesting though, and if you wanted to do a different style of hem stitch, you pretty much had to buy a different machine. Each machine was set up to do one hem stitch and one hem stitch only. And there is a mention of that in the instruction manual, that each of the different models of hem stitch is designed to produce a different size hole and stitch setup. This machine, which is a 72W19, is designed to produce a 1/16 inch hole for the hem stitch. You could get different machines with different model numbers that produce holes all the way up to 1/2 of an inch. Also, as part of the electrification of this machine, has a bracket there for a light that I've since removed because the wiring was in poor condition. I'm sure that's been modified or changed when the machine was electrified. Look at the upper side of the machine. There are 2 tension discs for the upper thread. Each one has its own tension. 2 thread checks down here and 2 thread guides, 2 spool pins. So all in all, a rather complex piece of machinery. Any adjustment you make pretty well affects all the other adjustments. If you want to adjust the length of stitch, the feed length, you've got to go in and readjust everything else. And like I said, I've spent some time, considerable time with it, cleaning it up and making adjustments and threading it. It's quite a bear to thread. But eventually I will get it working and I'll demonstrate what it does. Part of the failures I've been having at making it work correctly may be attributable to the type of fabric I am using. I'm sure it's finicky there. So that is the Singer 72W19, a machine made at the Bridgeport factory of the Wheeler and Wilson Company, former. This machine, I think, was made in 1911 off the serial number. So it was made after the shortly after the Singer takeover of Wheeler and Wilson. They were the makers of the first rotary hook machine, which is the type of mechanism used in all sewing machines today. And this machine, the overall shape of it and its construction features have very similar designs to a Wheeler and Wilson machine, but this is one that was made under Singer ownership. I don't know the history of the designs of this machine, but it is a full-on manufacturing machine. So, all right, that's it. So, OK Bridges, thank you for watching.